Can a game be too hard? Based on his previous catalog of Souls games, Elden Ring director Hidetaka Miyazaki would likely say no. Elden Ring, the most recent addition to the From Software library of difficult to master, difficult to put down action RPGs, is heavily favored to win multiple Game of the Year awards for 2022.
I command thee.
But what game design choices make Elden Ring feel different? Why has it captured the free time of gamers around the world ever since its release in February 2022? It's not the stunning vistas, memorable bosses, the tight combat, or even the rich story and lore from the collaboration with George R.R. Martin.
Well, it actually is considerably different. I've played some video games. I'm not a big video gamer, but the game is called the Elden Ring.
It comes down to the game design choice to provide players with the opportunity of failure. Veterans of Miyazaki's previous efforts are very familiar with their punishing nature. Impatient players are quickly put in their place, hack and slash will get you killed, and enemies are designed to take advantage of overeager novices. Where some games send waves of enemies as cannon fodder to test players, Elden Ring can overwhelm players with just 2 or 3 enemies. While some games flex difficulty by increasing the sponginess of enemies, Elden Ring focuses on execution, timing, and combat strategy that one might find implemented in a turn-based strategy game, all within a fast-paced and responsive combat system. But why does Elden Ring's difficulty matter? Could you keep the visuals, story, and even combat mechanics and just slap on an easy mode? Something that was heavily requested as the game reached more mainstream gamers. I think the clear answer, from a game development perspective, is no. And it's the power of failure that has made Elden Ring such a memorable experience. It's a common cliche to suggest that games in the modern era are too easy and have entirely too much handholding. While there may be some truth to that statement, the reality is more complicated. Games of the early consoles were largely derived from the games of the arcade, and arcade games were designed to be difficult to keep the player coming back for more, largely because the entire economy of arcade games depended on repeated play sessions. Arcade games often had no ending, and those that did made the player earn that victory either through unmatched skill or an allowance worth of quarters. Early console games followed suit with games like Contra and Ghosts and Goblins. Early console games were also harder by default due to less than refined controls, gameplay mechanics, and technology limits with rendering. Characters were less responsive, visuals less clear, meaning the intention of the game designers was not always easy to understand. Game development as a whole was also less standardized, and some gaming experiences suffered because the developers didn't really know what they were doing when it came to player interaction and accessibility. Combine that with the lack of an internet that currently provides players with walkthroughs, video walkthroughs, FAQs, maps, tricks, streams, etc., and players were often left in the dark with only their friends to share gaming intel with. Compare that with many titles today that include very structured tutorials, various difficulty modes, and structure their game with heavy amounts of scaffolding. Scaffolding is the process of slowly building comprehension or expertise in a task where the overall task is broken down with multiple levels of achievement. For example, think of a level where the player must progress to the end. A game design that allows for failure might make a player start from the beginning of the level every time they die. Frustrating to be sure, but the final achievement of beating the level is made that much sweeter. Compare that to a heavily scaffolded approach where the player has numerous save points or autosaves at major points of the level. Once the player reaches a certain point, they don't have to go back, making the journey to the end a much smoother process, but also ultimately diminishing the overall achievement of completing the level. While even Elden Ring makes use of this scaffolding approach by having higher level areas and keeping stronger weapons and equipment for later in the game, the lines of separation are much smaller, or even hazy at best. From the start, players can access most of the map immediately, encountering any enemy or boss they come across. How many new players stepped out into Limgrave only to run immediately into the Tree Sentinel and get absolutely and utterly destroyed? While some games might lock areas behind collection gates, or gradually give the player more moves or equipment during certain parts of their journey, Elden Ring basically lays it all out and says, go experience the world how you want. This ability to explore where, how, and when you want gives the player a huge amount of freedom and choice in their experience. And because the player has that freedom, they gain more opportunity for failure. Failure is a strange thing. We don't want to fail. Failing is difficult. But failure is also part of learning. We learn through failure. And in the end, failure can be powerful. Games that remove the element of failure feel too easy, and games that are too easy can quickly lose the sense of achievement players strive for. Part of the appeal of games is that serotonin boost you get from solving a problem successfully. That boost becomes larger the more difficult that problem is, as does the emotional upswing that can occur when completing a challenge that takes longer to master. Easy challenges provide smaller amounts of serotonin, which reduces the emotional impact a game can have on the player. So maintaining that opportunity for the player to fail allows Elden Ring to manipulate that psychological response in a much stronger way, leading to those moments where you finally succeed in beating a boss after a couple hundred tries. In Elden Ring, failure is a game design choice. You are supposed to fail because that is how you improve and eventually progress in the game. Elden Ring also maintains that punishing approach, even if the player fails repeatedly. Some games may take repeated failure as a sign that the player needs assistance, a boost, even to the point of invincibility, or to make the game more forgiving. This isn't to say that increasing accessibility is a bad design choice and makes those games bad. In the case of Elden Ring, however, where the main player experience lies within the trial and error of failure until finally overcoming each trial, that kind of difficulty adjustment would make little sense. Elden Ring is a great game because of all of the elements of game design that it does well. It's a masterpiece because it pushes the player to learn and adapt by giving them the opportunity to fail. Many games gloss over the importance of this game design choice, forcing players into an on-the-rails experience where they have little choice in the direction of the gaming journey. The ultimate irony of Elden Ring, and why this opportunity of failure is so expertly implemented, is that the core gameplay itself is very structured. Like most games, Elden Ring is a game of patterns. The player experience of combat is intricately designed and heavily reliant on timing and space. Most encounters rely on the same problem-solving process. Learn your enemy's moves, find openings, and take your shots when able. This heavy use of patterns make the core gameplay of Elden Ring actually pretty simple. Find enemies, then defeat them. The character building is also extremely rich, and the game provides a seemingly endless array of builds that players can experiment with, but the core gameplay remains the same. Yet despite this core belief in patterns and structure, the world the players are put in is anything but. There is little repetition in the world of Elden Ring. Grand vistas change across the landscape, towering castles, each unique in design and danger, are scattered throughout the land among deep valleys, vast lakes, and grand mountains. The world of Elden Ring is alive, with every short journey providing a new experience for the player. This freedom of exploration deepens the sense that anything can be around the corner. This makes exploration interesting. And because anything and everything can take you down, it also means exploration has risk that you can fail again. Elden Ring will likely sit in the halls of gaming legend as one of the greatest games ever made, and it's a mantle it deserves due to its courageous design decision to allow players to fail, because it's the opportunity to fail and the power of that failure that has provided players with such a powerful, emotional experience that keeps them coming back again and again to the world of Elden Ring.